Now, I would like to invite Dr. Nafisa Shah, Member National Assembly and an illustrious politician, to share her views on the subject.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Shahid Khaqan Abbasi Sahab, former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Honorable Raza Rabbani Sahab, former Chairman Senate, Honorable Ali Zafar Sahab, Honorable Salahuddin Ahmed Sahab, members of the Bar, students of politics, students of law, members of the civil society, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I'm truly humbled and of course very grateful that I've been given this opportunity to address a very, very privileged group of people here. But let me begin first by paying homage to what I call the patron saint of human rights in Pakistan, Mohtarma Asma Jahangir Sahiba. Asma Jahangir Sahiba endures. Her memory is with us. She's alive because she was the strongest, the most independent, and what I value the most was the most irreverent and the most defiant voice, who stood tall, who was independent, and who had no constraints. She stood up for what was right, and she spoke truth to power. And I think today, this is the voice that we miss a lot. And this forum is probably the best tribute we could give her. I want to congratulate her two daughters, Munize and of course Sulema, and the team of lawyers who are her legacy, the Asma Jahangir group, who have consistently provided this platform for civil society to Pakistan. I will try to stick to my 10 minutes, and there are very important panelists after me. The topic before us, it was very comprehensively dealt with by Honorable Ali Zafar Sahab, is on the separation of powers between the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. This, of course, is to all jurists, students of jurisprudence, students of law, legislators. This, we know, is the best safeguard to citizens' rights and the best safeguard against tyranny as well. And unfortunately, Pakistan, we have seen both in democratic times and in times of dictatorship, has the tendency to fall prey to tyrannical rule. I'm just going to go through, I have categorized Pakistan's history in 3 periods, and these have been dealt with beautifully by the Honorable Justice of the Supreme Court yesterday in his speech, and also by the panelist before me. But I'm just going to summarize some points so as to build my argument on what I want to talk about eventually. So the first period, which was talked about also, and I think that this period is between 1947 to 1970-71, which started with an euphoric sentiment, creation of a new state, rebuilding the ideology of Pakistan, how to put it in place, and which ended in shattering of a dream. It broke up Pakistan. And this period, perhaps not as much as separation of powers is the issue here, but the issue here before us was a lack of structure for the new entity. In all these years, we failed to decide as a nation, as a state, what kind of a structure we were going to have as a people. And I think that this failure led to all manner of dismissals, all manner of crises, all kind of turbulence, tumultuous, and it eventually led to the separation of the fall of Dhaka, the Sukute Dhaka phase. The second phase was from 1971 to 2007. And there we did have a structure, and this structure was the great 1973 Constitution, and I'm proud to be a worker of a leader who was the architect of that 1973 Constitution. However, this phase was, if not as tumultuous as the first phase, had its share of tragedies for Pakistan. And this, perhaps, maybe the jurists here, the students of jurisprudence, scholars will, perhaps historians will summarize that why, despite a constitution, 1973 constitution, we had frequent abrogations of the constitution, we had repeated attacks to the civilian supremacy, we had even assassinations of the leaders who struggled for the constitution and the constitutional rule. I would just say that perhaps it was the lack of reconciliation for or respect for the civilian rule in Pakistan, and the extraordinarily strong judicial military nexus or structure perhaps was not able to reconcile people's power, and that led to these frequent abrogations. So this period was marked by confrontations. The common thread, and here I will want to implicate Pakistan's judiciary. I'm not sure if I should do it as an institution. I'm not sure if I should do what the Justice Faiz Issa said, let's blame the individuals and get away with it. Let's talk about Justice Munir and Justice Anwarul Haq and get away with it. I'm not sure if I want to even get into this debate, but the fact is that in this period, starting from 1947, right up to 2007, when we've had military rules and frequent dismissals and states of emergency, states of exception, how do we explain that the consistent thread in all these abrogations of the constitutions, dismissals, states of exceptions, extra-constitutional rules, was that our judiciary, in all manners, in all inventions, whether it was the doctrine of necessity, whether it was the provincial constitutional order, in all its manners, it rationalized, it normalized extra-constitutional steps throughout. And I don't know if it was the individual, if it was structural, if it was the very state of the way Pakistan's history is, whether it was geopolitics, I don't know. But judiciary provided that solid legal basis for state of exception to be normalized and to be regularized. Now let's come to the third and the very interesting phase, which I call the phase of the cocktail democracy, or many people have called it hybrid democracy also. And this phase starts from 2008. Again, the precursor to this phase was, I would say, Shahid Mohattarma Benazir Bhutto, who came back to lead from the front and bring back democracy after a very bizarre dictatorship of General Musharraf. So from that period to today, the good news is we've had uninterrupted democracy, and that I credit to two incidents. One was the signing of Charter of Democracy between the two leaders or the two parties, popular parties, who came together and said that because politicians fight, it gives opportunity to others to come in the fray. So we will not fight. And we will not, and of course I want to commend Raza Rabani Saab here. He was, I think, one of the drafters of Charter of Democracy. And the Charter of Democracy laid the structural foundation for the present Constitution of Pakistan, and the present Constitution of Pakistan owes a great deal to the 18th Amendment. There may be a lot of issues with the 18th Amendment, but it laid down some ground rules for separation of powers. Powers between the federation and the provinces, and the powers, of course, between the three organs of the state. So, one credit was the Charter of Democracy, one event why we've had this 14 years, although it is a cocktail democracy, I'll finish soon. Although it's a cocktail democracy and it's a hybrid democracy, it is still a democracy. And the second event that I want to credit to the uninterrupted, although there were many incidences, there were even invitations, I believe, in the not so recent past, invitations to other forces to step in, but the democracy prevailed. The other reason for this is the community that I'm sitting here and largely addressing is the legal community, the bar and the bench. And they, through a lawyers' movement, decided or resolved, including the bench, that there will be no more PCOs, that there will be no more provisional constitutional orders, and so we have this cocktail democracy. Now, why is this a cocktail democracy, and what we need to do, and how do we get out? First of all, why I'm saying it's a hybrid democracy is because there is a terrible, terrible mess in the way we are balancing our institutions. And there, all three institutions are implicated. The executive is implicated, the judiciary is implicated, and of course, the parliament is implicated. So what happened immediately after 2007 is we had and perhaps because there was this activist mode of the lawyers' movement, there was this populist, vibrant feeling, euphoria within the judiciary. So we had this, what I call the period of the rule of suo motu. And there the executive powers were appropriated again and again and again. Then coming to the executive side, we've had through the executive, and this I would refer to the period from 2018 particularly, the last government, they had a a quasi-legislative role, because the last 3 years was the rule by ordinances. I was sitting in the parliament, we were twiddling our thumbs, and suddenly we had an ordinance slapped before us, and we just had to approve this ordinance. So this was an impingement of the powers of the parliament by the very executive. Apart from the fact that the prime ministers then did not even want to come to the parliament. And then, of course, we've had this repeated incursion by our superior judiciary of both the legislator's powers and the executive powers. And what I want to point out towards is, to all of you, so that perhaps the bar will take it up, and I think the former Prime Minister will also talk about it. At some stage, there was a judgment which said that the Prime Minister has no sole authority and he will only decide if the cabinet, something called the collective decision making. Now, where does the Prime Minister stand if you want to clip his wings? And for every little thing, for little price change also, he has to go to the cabinet. So this is something that is a clear encroachment in the executive's powers. And finally, the last from April, from the time of the vote of no confidence till today, we've had roller coaster rulings by the judiciary. Some good, some very, very seriously grave. Yeah, and yes, it is for the first time that we saw in history that there was a speaker's coup within the parliament. That was also extremely interesting, extremely fascinating, but extremely bizarre. Is for the first time the speaker interpreted his power to ruling. A speaker's ruling is only to the extent of the procedure. But we had, during the vote of no confidence, a speaker, or rather a deputy speaker, who ruled on a constitutional article. This is unheard of. He ruled on Article 5 and he dismissed the vote of no confidence. This is unheard of. Luckily, and then this was followed up by another, an extreme step by the executive in dismissal of the assembly. Luckily, the courts, luckily they sat in the night, and luckily they did away with this. But come back to the, and I will end here, 63A. I think as a parliamentarian, the courts have not dealt us a favor. On the contrary, they have tried to make a constitutional amendment through a ruling. And the detailed judgment is here. I believe the bar, the Supreme Court bar, has gone in for a review petition, and I would want the students of bar to also look at this. Now, going forward, how do we turn this phase, which is a critical phase? And I think from here, even if it's a hybrid democracy, if we want to move towards civilian supremacy, we have to do a series of actions, all of us. And for that, first I want to address my own class, the politicians. The politicians have to stop bickering. We have to stop fighting. There is one party that thinks that the rest of the parties are dirty. This is wrong. This is not on. That particular party has to sit with all the politicians who have historical memory, who have done their own struggles. They may have made mistakes, but this particular party needs to decide which side is it on. Is it a part or a product of the hybrid system? Or does it want to be a part of a democratic culture in Pakistan? And if it wants to be a part of the democratic culture in Pakistan, then it has to sit with the democratic forces of Pakistan and be on our side. And that is the only way when you will finish the tutelage, the very paternalistic courts which have taken. Today, the courtroom is the place where political disputes are fought out, something we can easily sit and decide, why is this the case? So I'll end here. So first, this is the point. Maybe we need to sign a new charter of agreement. Invite the third party. Please come and sit on our side. Let's talk. Let's figure out what your problems are. Let's move on. Yes, there should be a free and fair elections. Nobody's denied that. But I think this third party should first respect the flood victims. They want elections today. Today, my district is drowned in, at times, 20 feet of water. And you're talking about elections when people are talking about their survival? Have I seen this political party for one day talk about respect for the flood victims? I think it will take my district at least 1 year to come out of the flood. So let's really, really be sensible about the way we have gained. And let's now consolidate our gains and do not allow, when your military is saying we don't want any we don't want to come into politics anymore, let's place them there. And let's put the judiciary also on the spot for their incursions. For us, we political forces have to put our house in order. Thank you.